Hi, I'm Lisa Lounsbury, your resilience and well-being expert, and you're listening to Your Wellness. If you need that extra jolt of inspiration, you've got to hear this episode. My guest, Mark Black, was born with a serious heart defect and went through a heart and double lung transplant. He got strong enough to run 4 marathons, marrying the love of his life, and becoming a dad to 3 healthy kids. And now in his 40s, even as his kidneys are shutting down and he's on dialysis 3 days a week, he still speaks to audiences all over the world. Learn how he does it and stay till the end to hear his powerful message and how you can find your own resilience right here on Your Wellness. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Your Wellness. I'm excited to introduce my next guest to you. Today I have Mark Black, and Mark Black is coming to us from the East Coast, and he is a resilience expert, an author. He's a keynote speaker, he's a coach, and he has a very extraordinary story to share with us. And I would like to welcome you to the show, Mark.
Thanks for having me, Lisa. Good to be here.
Now, Mark's also the president of the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers, which I am a member of. So, Mark is a great mentor to me and to hundreds of other folks in the CAPS community. So, I just wanted to plug that out there.
Well, yeah, I do my best to pay forward what I've received from others in the past. So, yeah.
Well, you're doing your thing. Now, today I want you to share us your story and what you often will share to your folks. And it comes with a background as being you were born with a heart defect and
Mhm.
and you also run marathons. So there's a long story in between there. So Mark, let's get your backstory and let's get talking.
All right. Well, so I will go back to the beginning, but fear not if you're listening. We won't go through 47 years of history here. Uh, but yes, I was born with a what's called aortic stenosis, so a valve in the heart that just didn't open. And to two 24-year-old first-time parents, I always say that because as a parent
Mm.
myself, I know a little bit now about what that was like to be A, so young, and B, no experience. And then this baby is born and he turns blue and they
Mm.
medevac him to a hospital 3 hours away. My parents were pretty extraordinary people. Um, so I was medevaced. I had open heart surgery at 1 day old, another surgery when I was a year old. And then doctors kind of said, take him home and do the best you can with him, but he's got a long, difficult road ahead. And yeah, and I spent my early childhood and teen years, I'd say in and out of hospital. It wasn't that I was in and out of hospital for long periods of time, but frequently, as I tried to manage a congenital heart disease until till I was 23 when everything kind of hit the fan and things got serious pretty quickly.
Oh no. And so up until you were 23, were you able to attend school? Like, did you make all those milestones? Were they all still happening?
They were, yeah, and that was not expected necessarily, but
Mm.
I did better than expected. And I was able to be active in sports until I was about 13 or 14. My parents are both gym teachers, so they were keen on that happening. Um, until I got to a point where my heart rhythm was dangerous and the doctors weren't sure. But anyway, and then yeah, when I was 23, I developed something called congestive heart failure, which essentially means your heart, because it's not functioning properly, causes fluid to back up into your kidneys, your abdomen, your lungs, so you get short of breath. And in a period of months, I could not climb a flight of stairs without getting winded. Couldn't do much of anything without getting tired. So we went to investigate that, and the doctor said, "Yeah, you need a transplant, and you need it like yesterday."
Mhm.
And so in a short period of time, I went from being a full-time student at university, planning my career, um, girlfriend of 3 years, planning to get married, and all of that comes stops very abruptly, and we put everything on hold to try and go get a transplant. So a few months later, I was moving. Dad and I moved from New Brunswick to Toronto so that I could be put on the transplant list.
And what organs did you need replaced? Which ones were failing?
So the heart was failing, but the failing of the heart was affecting the lungs. And so they said you need to have all three because if you only have your heart, it just isn't going to work properly. So because I needed heart and lungs, there were only three medical centers in all of Canada that can do that transplant. One was in Edmonton, one was in Montreal, one was in Toronto. And the one in Montreal, it was at the French hospital. And although I'm bilingual, I didn't want to do medical things in my second language.
Okay.
So the options were Toronto and Edmonton. Toronto was closer. So that's where we went.
And how long did you have to wait?
I was on the list for almost a year, 10 months on the list.
Oh,
So 6 months we waited out of the hospital. I waited. My dad's aunt took us in, and then my dad's cousin took us in. So we lived there with them. And then after 6 months, I got too sick, and the doctors were not comfortable with me living outside the hospital. So
mm.
I was admitted for the last 6 months of that wait.
And what is it like waiting for life-saving surgery like that?
It is stressful. It's dealing with the unknown, right? It's just the the main reason I was being observed 24 hours a day was because my heart was at risk for something called ventricular tachycardia, which basically just means your ventricles, the bottom chambers of the heart, spontaneously race out of control, which leaves you at high risk for something they call sudden cardiac death. Doesn't take a medical degree to understand what that means.
Not good.
And so I was really literally at risk of my heart stopping at any second, which is a fairly stressful situation. Um, but it's funny because you get accustomed to living with that level of stress, right? Your kind of whole body resets, your mind resets to living on the edge, I guess. And so, yeah, after 2 or 3 months, just kind of get used to that
Mm.
and develop a level of acceptance that if it's going to happen, it's going to happen, and I can't control it. So let's try and create some level of normalcy in this very abnormal situation.
Wow. How did that impact your siblings? You have siblings, right?
I have three younger brothers. Yeah. Um, well, I mean, they would be better to answer that, but dramatically, I would say. I mean, mom and dad were very committed to making sure that one of them was with me at all times.
Mm.
And so they would split time between Toronto and home. In the summer, they're both teachers. So in the summertime, when they were both off, sometimes they would both be with me. And so, yeah, my brothers had to make a lot of sacrifices
Hmm.
to make that happen.
And what was that day like when you were told they had the organs that you needed?
Yeah, it's a day that I will remember forever. It was September the 6th,
Mm.
2002 at 10:15 p.m.
Wow.
I was in my room watching TV before bed like I did every night in the hospital. My nurse who was on call that night came to the door and said, "There's a call for you at the nurse's station." And Lisa had been in this hospital for 6 months. There's a phone beside your bed. Like, you can get calls at the nurse's station. Something's going
Right.
on.
Right.
Right. So I go down the hall. I go into the nurse's station. There are three nurses standing around the phone in tears. And I picked up the phone, and the stranger on the other end of the line said, "Mr. Black, I think we have a set of heart and lungs for you." And there was a long, awkward pause. Because
Hmm.
how do you respond to that? Thanks. I think I managed to thank you. Um, anyway, she said your surgery will start in about 7 hours. So
Oh my.
go get ready.
Wow. Let's do it.
Yeah.
How
So
long were
I
you in how long were you in surgery for? How long did your parents have to wait?
so mom arrived because mom was with me in Toronto at that point. I called her immediately. She got there in about 45 minutes. We waited until about I'm gonna say it was 6 or 7 hours until the surgery started. So probably around 6 in the morning. And then it was another 7 hours of surgery. So and then I was heavily sedated for about 5 days. So,
Mm.
um, yeah, I was in and out of consciousness for almost a week.
Did the organs come from one donor?
They did.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So I think you're probably a organ donor advocate, perhaps?
Huge organ donor advocate. We've done a bunch of work with the Canadian Transplant Association. We founded a run here at home to start to raise money for advocacy back in 2003, and it's now grown to 20 cities around Canada or something like that and
Mhm.
raised a couple $100,000.
Wonderful.
Um, yeah, it's hugely important to me because obviously I'm alive because of it, but
Mhm.
also because it's such a small fraction of us would ever have the opportunity to be in a situation where we could possibly be an organ donor, that it's critically important that those who can do, because we lose about 300 Canadians every year who die on the waiting list.
Mm. Those who can do.
Hmm.
Yeah. So your message is on resilience when you speak. Where did resilience come in? When did you realize you needed it or you have it or it's keeping you going?
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways I've been developing it my entire life. I
Mm.
think we all are. I mean, one of the things that I talk about in my presentations and in my book is that we all have the capacity. It's just like any other skill set. Do we develop it or do we not develop it? And some of us have I mean, it's a combination, I think, of nature nurture, right? There's some biological factors, but there's also a lot of behavioral factors and environmental factors that go into whether somebody is resilient or not. But it's something that we can learn. And so I think it's an incredibly important skill. And I think more important now than ever before, because when we're living in an age of continual dramatic change, as I think we can all agree we are, then the ability to adapt proactively and effectively is important. And that's, to me, the essence of what resilience is. It's not about bouncing back. It's about growing through, right? How do we evolve and grow and become better versions of who we were as a result of the challenges we face, as opposed to using them as reasons why we can't do things?
And what do you think, or how do you think that skill can be revealed or developed if you don't think you have that resilience?
Right. So I think, I mean, I talk about some skill sets that we all need that we can develop. Uh, Acceptance, adaptability,
Mm-hmm.
uh, aspiration, the ability to set goals out into the future and create a vision of something that's worth aspiring to. Uh, Consistent daily action. So, what are we doing on a consistent basis to make those goals or dreams or aspirations come true? Um, and how do we get better at any of those things? Well, we practice, right? So I think again, people mistakenly believe that those they see out in their lives or on social media or in TV who appear to be super resilient,
Mm-hmm.
that they have some secret or that they're just born with it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not. They just practice,
Right.
right? They put themselves in opportunities and situations where they were able to practice the skills required to be more resilient tomorrow than they are today. And so one of the things that we work on as parents is trying to give our kids opportunities to to fail safely, right? To try things and figure things out and struggle a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
learn from mistakes. And I tend to think that we all, though, I think most of us would agree, us of a certain age, would agree that the current generation is maybe less resilient than we were. And I think that's our fault as the parents of that generation
Mm-hmm.
because we made their lives too easy,
I agree.
right?
I agree.
And so, in an effort to give them everything we didn't have,
Mm-hmm.
or quite honestly, I think in some ways, in an effort to compete with the Joneses and try and make our Instagram profiles look better than somebody else's, we've given our kids so much that they haven't had the opportunity to struggle a little bit. And I say opportunity on purpose because I think struggle is a gift. Struggle is an opportunity to learn. Struggle is where you create self confidence. Struggle is where you learn what you're capable of. And we've robbed our kids of that in some ways.
And I agree as a parent as well, Mark, that we've somehow thought that if we just gave them everything and protected them from struggle and pain and tears, that we were doing the right thing. And I think I'm just speaking for myself. I think I course corrected too much. and then eventually realized, oh, maybe I'm doing a little bit too much. So I'm glad I reversed that or kind of found
Mm.
a better balance earlier on when I was parenting. But I think that's a good message that we have to fail safely, allow our children to fail safe, allow ourselves actually the opportunity. What's the worst that can happen? And if we navigate that, we might find ourselves more resilient. And I speak on resiliency too in a different capacity, but I like
Mm.
your perspective. Now, we have to talk about your marathons.
Yeah.
What would ever possess you to want to run a marathon, let alone a heart and lung transplant recipient run a marathon? Where did that come from?
That's a great question. I've always been a competitive person. And again, I had a history with athletics because of my parents, but I was also always small. So I'm 5 feet tall. I weigh 110 pounds. So I was always kind of behind everybody else, which forced me to work harder probably than some of my peers and to keep up. Um, so I was always interested in challenging myself, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so after the transplant, I kind of realized, first of all, that I was given this second chance and that I was now physically not limited in terms of my cardiac function, at least in terms of what I could do. And so I thought, well, what would be the ultimate way to prove to myself that I can do whatever I set my mind to doing? And marathoning seemed like the answer to that question. I don't know why. So I decided, let's see if I can do one. And at that point, I literally struggled to walk up a flight of stairs. But I thought, well, now that I know it's not dangerous to try, let's just push a little bit and see what happens. And so I started, and it started with, you know, it literally started with 5 minutes on a treadmill, 10 days post transplant doing cardiac
Wow.
rehab, lifting 1 pound weights in the hospital rehab gym to regain strength after the surgery. But I jogged on the treadmill, and I use that term very loosely, for a few minutes the last day of rehab just to prove to myself that I could. And it was painful because I was still healing. But again, I was able to do it. I thought, okay, well, so we keep doing this. And then eventually I could run a 5, and then I could run a 10. And it took me, what, a year and a half? I celebrated my 26th birthday that I didn't think I'd see by running
Mm,
a half marathon. And then a year after that, ran the first marathon. And then I ran one a year for 4 years. I had a goal to run 5 marathons by the time I was 30. But when I was 29, my wife got pregnant and with her second child. And I remember going out to run one day to train, and Maris was holding this newborn and this 3-year-old running around the house. And I'm saying, I'm going to go run for 4 hours, dear. And I'm thinking, this doesn't seem fair. Because not only am I going to go run for 4 hours, but I'm going to be home and be useless the rest of the day because I'm exhausted.
right.
And so I thought, okay, maybe no more distance running until the kids are older. And so 4 marathons is where it ended. And I may or may not go back to it someday, but I haven't gone back to distance running since.
That's a good story to tell. Good story. How did you feel after that first half marathon? What went through your mind? Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah, it was the feeling that I think we can all relate to, which is, wow, I did that,
Hmm.
right? Like we've all, I think, had an experience where we thought we had to do something we weren't sure we could do and we
Right.
figured it out, maybe scared, maybe afraid of failing, and we did it. And the feeling of that is, it's just gratifying. It's just rewarding, right? It wasn't about the time. It wasn't about the medal. It wasn't about what anybody else thought. It was just that feeling inside of going, oh, wow, like I set this objective of something I wanted to achieve that I wasn't sure I could do, and I did it. And again, I think that's something we need to give ourselves more often.
It's very empowering, I would think, when you are just doing this for yourself and you just happy you did it, happy you completed it. And I can imagine how much you wanted to just, okay, what can I do now? What next?
Absolutely,
Where's
right?
the
So,
glass
yeah,
ceiling?
absolutely. One of the things I like to say in presentations to people is, um, I remember this phrase all the time. I say, if I can do that, then I can do this.
Mm.
So whatever this thing is, whenever we're facing that next big challenge, just remind yourself of all the stuff you've already done. Like we're so quick to move to the next thing and discount all we've accomplished so far and just say, well, yeah, we're sometimes too humble. Um, it's important to remember how far you've come and the things you've accomplished because you're the same person that did all that stuff. And
Right.
actually, you're a better version of that person because you probably learned some things along the way. So if you can do that, then 99 times out of 100, whatever you're about to face is not the hardest thing you've ever done. So you can probably do this too.
I like that because I think for myself, every time I'm thinking of my next goal, I'm like, there's doubt, there's fear. Oh, I'm not sure. But how did I accomplish all those other things? I think those skills learned are transferable into the
Absolutely.
next
Yeah,
goal.
absolutely.
And how do you inspire your listeners when it comes to resilience? Because not everyone has a similar story like yours. Yours is pretty unique. So how do you transfer how you do
Right.
resilience onto others?
Well, one of the first things that I do is remind people of that fact, right? Like I'm going to tell you this story that's fairly unique. Uh, but we all have a story.
Mhm.
And your story is not mine, mine is not yours, and that doesn't matter. What ma and what would be challenging for me might be easy for you and vice versa. Right.
Right.
So, well, I've gone through this experience and I've normalized it because that's what we all do. We normalize our situation because it's what we have to do. I don't know how I would deal with my parents getting divorced when I was young because I didn't have to go through that. Or I don't know. I don't know what it would be like to, I don't know, have a learning disability or like whatever, right? So let's not compare because we're not comparing apples to apples.
Right.
What's more useful is what are the learnings from my experience that you can draw from? And how do they apply to your situation? Because we've all faced challenge. We've all faced difficult situations. We've all faced times where we were scared or disempowered or up against challenges that we weren't sure we could handle. So that's the context that I give people. And then I give them some tools, some of the things that I learned along the way or reverse engineered after the fact
Mhm.
that were helpful for getting through what I went through.
Do you have any daily strategies or behaviors or habits that you stick to and do no matter what?
Yeah, I have a few. So the first is move my body.
Hmm.
So some sort of exercise, and it might just be a walk for 20 minutes. Like it's not necessarily going to the gym for an hour. But mental health and physical health, that's a big one for me. Um, in excuse me, journaling as much as possible is a big one for me because it helps me to process things. Um, what else?
Do you journal in the morning or at night or whenever you think of it?
Whenever I can, yeah, I don't really have a set time that I do it. Um, and I don't do it every day either. I mean, I think, I try and be careful with sharing things on, especially like shows and podcasts, because, I think often I know I do, I listen to lots of podcasts and I hear some guests and they set a standard
Mm.
or an expectation that's like, everybody's got to be up at 4 a.m. and do these 25 things before they go to work in
Right.
the morning. And it's like, well, who's really doing that?
Right.
Um, So yeah, I'm not flawless, I'm not perfect, but I try and do these things more often than not. Um, taking some time, excuse me, taking some time to, um, yeah, get in touch with who I have been and who I want to be. So whether that's journaling or it's not even meditation, it's just kind of like sitting quietly with that thought, thinking about what the goals are for the future. Um, I think those are kind of the big ones.
And those are pretty common ones. And because they're being repeated by so many folks, they're good strategies, right? They work. Moving your body and journaling and thinking about those things and being still. I hope our listeners have heard that often enough to trust that it works. And you're right, we don't have to have the expectation that we're going to be 100% good at it all the time and give ourselves a little bit of grace, a little bit of permission to not do it some days. And I think we're hard on ourselves. And I know I tend to do that as well. So moving
Yeah.
forward, oh, go ahead, Mark.
No, no, well, I was just gonna say, I think, yeah, too many times, especially if we're starting a new habit like that, we have that black and white thinking, right? Of like, okay, I'm gonna go do it every day, and then we miss a day and go, okay, well, that's done, right? And it's, well, no, like if you did it, 7 out of 10 days, then that's 7 days you weren't doing it at all before, right? So that's 7 days you're doing it now. So that's
Exactly.
great, right? That's
Exactly.
huge. So let's not allow black and white thinking to derail us from developing a new healthy habit.
Good point. Now, what are you preparing for? What's your next milestone for Mark personally?
So I'm outlining a new book. So I wrote my last book 2 years ago. Doesn't feel like it's been that long, but it's been that long already. So working on a new book and a new presentation and growing my coaching business. So I've been traveling speaking now for 22 years and I still love it, but we have three active kids and my wife works full time. And so being on the road a lot is not super practical. So I'm trying to balance that with creating other revenue streams and working with speakers as a coach is proving to be a good way to do that and a good way to help speakers who need some help to get some help. So
Yeah.
those are kind of where I'm focused for the next couple of years. And then I'm always, adaptability is a big part of my life. So I'm always also looking at what what's changing in the world and what's changing in the business and trying to navigate that at the same time.
I've seen you do that often, just keep being adaptable and learning new things. Could we talk about another current challenge you have, if you want, comfortable?
Sure.
Because you are adaptable and you are resilient because you are still managing your business and being a husband and a father, and you are still dealing with some physical health challenges. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So about a year ago, I started to experience some kidney failure, which is expected when you survive transplant as long as I have. So, first of all, when I was lucky enough to receive a transplant 22 years ago, the doctors said uh, you have about a 50% chance to survive 5 years with this transplant. Transplants do
Wow.
not live forever. There are a number of possible complications, and so the life expectancy was somewhere between 5 and 10 years. So I'm super fortunate to still be here 22 years later. I always say that first because this is not complaining. I feel very blessed to
Mhm.
to be here to have that problem. But the problem is, because of the medications you take to prevent rejection of the organs, eventually that takes a toll. And they take a toll on your kidneys because they process the medication. So my kidneys are now failing, will fail it. They have failed. And so I'm on dialysis now, which means 3 days a week I go into the hospital for 4 hours at a time and get plugged into a machine that filters my blood, cleans my blood, which is what your kidneys do. That also causes some voice loss. So you can hear my struggling to keep up with my voice. So we're trying to find some solutions to that challenge because as a speaker,
Mhm.
that's a real problem. That's
Mhm.
actually the bigger problem for me right now in my physical health. But yeah, so I'm managing the kidney failure and the dialysis. Fortunately, I'm a candidate for kidney transplant, so hopefully that'll be the long-term solution. But in the meantime, I have to schedule dialysis treatments amidst the travels, which can be challenging sometimes.
And so that must be challenging. And I've witnessed how well you're doing it from my perspective. I'm not sure what your perspective is, but how do you now you're in this new challenge? How are you keeping it together? Like again, what is it that's keeping you driving forward to have the positivity or the optimism that you sound like you have?
Thank you for that. And you're right. To be totally truthful with you, Lisa, when the diagnosis happened, I anticipated being more negative than I am, if that makes any sense. Like
Yeah.
I'm handling it better than I thought it would. And I think that's the reason for that is a couple of things. I think I'm incredibly well supported. Family, friends, medical community that I deal with has been amazing. Um, I think writing that book and really believing what I say in that book
Mm,
matters. Like I really do believe what's in there. And I'm using it. And I've been through worse. And so I keep
mm,
reminding myself, look, this could be your lungs and heart failing. This could be like when I was dealing with my heart failure, there was no backup plan called dialysis, right? Like I
right,
at least have this luxury where I can go and do this treatment and I'm not as good as new, but almost the next day. And you can do it for a decade. So there's no imminent critical health issue. Um, and I mean, it's a pain in the butt, but like I can go and sit there and there's Wi-Fi. I can do office work. Like it could be a lot worse. So that's helpful to just kind of get it in perspective. Um, yeah, and I'm just trying to focus on gratitude. So I have three brothers who, as soon as they learned about my situation, said, well, can we get tested? Can we be donors? Like that was just not even a
mm,
question.
mm.
Um, which most people don't have that luxury. So all in all, I'm really, really fortunate.
Sounds like support has a lot to do with your optimism and keeping you going from day to day. It's
No
fantastic.
question. Yeah, no question. Um, but again, I think choosing to find that network if you don't have it is really important, right? And so sometimes people will
Mhm.
say to me in a coaching session, well, that's great, but like I don't know who my network is. I don't know who the people right around me are not particularly supportive. Okay, so we need to find people, right? You
Right,
need to go and look for them. You need to be proactive because they're out there. But too often so we're just shy to ask.
right.
I had somebody actually about 6 months ago, one of the best compliments I've ever received. A mentor of mine said, Mark, one of your superpowers is your ability to ask for help.
Mm,
And I went, like, what does that mean? And I kind of discounted it because we discount our strengths. I think we all do that.
right.
And I go, well, doesn't everybody just ask for help when they need it? And he said, no, of course not. And lots of people are too shy or too proud or too whatever to say, can you help me with this? And so, yeah, if that's something you need to hear today, don't be shy to ask for help.
I love that. Your superpower is your ability to ask for help. I think our listeners, there's somebody out there that probably needs to hear that because we keep forgetting that we are not expected to have all this going on and being able to do this alone. It takes a village to raise a child. I think it takes a village just to maintain your overall well-being and having a healthy lifestyle. So I love that. How about we end it at that? I think that is powerful is your superpower can be your ability to ask for help if you don't have it close by in in your household or down the street. It's out there.
Well, and I'll just tack on this other piece of it, Lisa, because
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's important for people who struggle with this. When you ask somebody else for help, you give them permission to ask you, right? So a lot of us, I think, again, we struggle because we don't want to be a burden. We don't want to, yeah, we don't want to be a burden to somebody else. But you don't know when that person is doing exactly the same in the opposite direction. When
Mm,
your best friend needs you and maybe they're being shy about asking you because they don't want to be a burden for you. So by asking somebody else for help, you unconsciously give them permission to ask you for help when they need it.
got it. Love it. Awesome. Well, thank you, Mark. I always learn from you, whether it's coaching or speaking or now resilience. Your story is unique, but I think you have a lot of transferable lessons there. So I hope our listeners got something from you. I'm sure I did. So
Thanks,
thank you.
Lisa. It was lots of fun.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Your Wellness. If you'd like to hear more interviews and discussions on your wellness or anything related to your health, your mental health, anything that's Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope this episode sparked some reflection, maybe a new perspective, or even just gave you a little something to carry with you into your day. If you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to follow the podcast so you don't miss what's coming up next. And as always, let's keep making wellness a priority for ourselves and for each other. Until next time, take care and be well.